Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Blair Abee or Abby. And he's an author, poet. He's also a mystic, which I'm really interesting to hear more about. And he's all about spirituality, higher conscious meditation. And I'm happy to have him on the show. Blair, welcome.
Chris, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. So I know we connected through Podmatch, and just briefly
Yes.
tell the audience what you do, how you got there, how you can help the audience.
Okay. I've been doing yoga now for since 1973.
Wow.
So it's been many years, more than 40 years. And yoga, type of yoga that I learned included a meditation practice at the end. So I've been meditating then for that time period off and on. But 8 years ago, I had a traumatic experience of being fired from a fairly high level job by a new boss who turned out to be something of a psychopath. And after a year of trying to deal with the fact that she was abusing employees and misusing funds and running the program into the ground, I finally did a whistleblowing, reported her to the authorities. An investigation was done. She was fired, but they fired me too. They said I was a troublemaker, which really meant that I'd exposed the fact that they weren't paying a whole lot of attention to the mismanagement. And that ended a 25-year career trajectory and, basically left me out on the streets, no job, and no particular prospects. I did a deep dive into my meditation practice for therapy, and began journaling the experience that I had as a result of that deep dive. And one of the things I began to notice was that as I was journaling, I began to have ideas, thoughts, realizations, understandings, and really a breakthrough in my meditation practice that I began to recognize as having made soul contact, having made contact with my higher consciousness. And I was basically having conversations with my soul. I was writing, and words were just flowing through my fingers onto the screen. And it was very therapeutic, as it turned out. After about 150,000 words, I realized that I had material for some books. And I never intended to be an author. I was headed toward being a state director someplace of a consulting group that I was working with. But, it turned out that was the right thing for me to do. It was maybe the best thing for me to do. It was a right-hand turn. It was a 90-degree turn from where I was headed. But it was as if my soul was saying to me, it's time for a change. And so I look back on it and I thank those people, even though I was very angry at the time. I thank those people for what ended up happening and for the unfolding that has happened since then, including the books and teaching, doing courses, doing podcasts, and really talking about my favorite subject, which is spirituality.
Yeah, it's a very fascinating discussion. And I have a question for you in this. I'm actually going to play devil's advocate is why do you thank them? And why are people at higher levels, especially government and just corruption and fraud and it's like you see the C-suites and you see very narcissistic and just again sociopaths, psychopaths, and it's just at all levels. And why do you thank them? Because they made you do this and where you could have really achieved something with that you wanted to do.
Yes. Well, I had never had a bad boss. I'd had great bosses. I'd had great work experiences. The work that I had done within my organization as part of a senior management team had been fabulous. I worked for some really fine people. We had a great program. But I moved to San Diego to take a promotion. And it was at that point that I encountered what turned out to be a terrible boss. And I just after a while I just couldn't put up with it anymore. It was too debilitating for me, and something needed to be done. And I was willing to risk my career on doing the right thing.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I'm just curious, you know, like, like because you delve into spirituality, but these people did you wrong. So, and it shows you how the institutions are not good institutions. It's full of corrupt people and like bad people, and doesn't that make you lose faith in humanity? I'm just kind of trying to understand this.
Yes. Well, again, I'd really never had a bad experience, so I was unprepared really for going into a situation that was not favorable to me. I'd always had ultimately a good experience, but it just shows you that as you said, at all levels there are um, good people, in many cases, very good people, very good institutions, and then you run across a bad apple, and it really has a negative, especially if they're a leader, has a negative impact on everybody around them.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I know, because Tony Robbins says, things happen for you and not to you. But again, like I said, but we can hit this on the head so many times. But so kind of moving on is this question of is well, I'm curious. So when you say you tapped into your higher self and you're having spiritual conversations, how do you know, like, what's the difference between your intuition and because for example, like in my travels, I get a lot of insights. I'm like, oh yeah, this and then but is that my higher self? Is that kind of the universe? Is it my intuition? How do you
Yes,
distill these things?
understand. Well, what
Mhm.
I've come to understand is that all of us have a soul, all of us have a higher consciousness. And I think most people kind of sort of know that, although in many cases we've never explored it very thoroughly. We haven't done the work that would be needed to have soul contact. Um, and that's, I think, what the value of meditation is. It gets you to be quiet enough that there's an opportunity there then for that part of yourself perhaps to leak through, and that it's always waiting for you to be available to it to wake up. Because I think all of us, at least most of us, come to this lifetime with an intention of waking up, of becoming more spiritually aware, of becoming more advanced human beings.
Mm,
But we don't get much training in that area of life. We get a lot of training in how to survive. We get a lot of training in how to cope with life, how to be a good three-dimensional being, but we don't get a whole lot of training because not very many people know, certainly not in my youth, know much about higher consciousness or know much about the fact that I think we're all eternal beings coming here multiple times to learn lessons and to grow and to evolve. And as a result, we're real limited unless we undertake a spiritual path that leads us to elevated awareness and higher consciousness.
So, question for you is, if you had continued on that path and you had been promoted to director, do you think that would have been a good thing for you, or is it just kind of, feeding your ego, or would you have gone down the path of self-destruction?
Yes.
Kind of, talk, enlighten us more.
Right. Well, I think all the above excepted self-destruction. I don't think it would have led to self-destruction, but it certainly would have fed my ego. It was certainly the career path that I was on. And I certainly wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I had continued on that path, because I'd probably still be in that organization and working away, doing good work, being, a valuable member of society. But I don't think I would have ever had the kind of experience that I had of discovery of that part of myself that I'd really never had direct contact with And even as long as I had done meditation, I'd really never had that experience of what I would call enlightenment or illumination is really the word that I prefer to use. I just don't know if I'd had that experience. So again, I think ultimately it was a good thing. Intermittently, it was terrible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting because same thing with my medical career. It's kind of it has a lot of parallels, but the only thing is, it was just kind of to, one is I was on the wrong path, and two, it would have just led to self-destruction, and it would have harmed a lot of individuals, such as including myself. So I think
Yes.
it's good. But it's really interesting how the intuition and the higher self or the universe, kind of steps in and kind of course corrects
Mm.
you. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes you got to do a complete 180. Sometimes you
Yes.
gotta fall down and, but so one thing is talking about spiritual manifestation and personal growth. What is spiritual manifestation and how does your process for best possible outcomes work? What is that?
Understand. So I've been interested in metaphysics and spiritual matters for many years. Have studied, read, tried many things, undertaken many, used many tools and so forth. And one of the things that I delved into was manifestation, and I did a number of things that's on that traditional trajectory of trying to learn how to manifest, like affirmations and doing vision boards and all of that kind of thing. But I never really found that those were ultimately very satisfying, somewhat helpful, but not ultimately satisfying. Um, but at one point, I began to realize that part of the problem with what's out there, like The Secret and so forth, is it's really not as much a spiritual approach as an ego approach. It's about having the mind come up with something that it really wants, like a BMW, and then trying to create a BMW out of using some processes, but it's not a real spiritual approach, and that a spiritual approach would actually be much more valuable. So I came up with, in conjunction with my higher consciousness, which I call High C. High C basically showed me a method called the best possible outcomes process. And let me kind of go through with you how the best possible outcomes process works. You start by taking a breath, perhaps saying something like peace, be still, which I use a lot as a mindfulness practice. I use it all the time for all kinds of situations. Peace, be still. And then I ask for the best possible outcome as it relates to my session, my podcast with Chris Liu today. And then I pause and wait for a breath to come that indicates that my higher consciousness or spirit has engaged, that my request, my ask has been heard, and acknowledged with that breath. And then I offer a thank you to spirit, a thank you to my higher self for its involvement in my life, and then turn that thing over to spirit and let spirit unfold that which is best for me and perhaps for all people involved in the activity, the best outcome for my growth and my evolution. So to go back over that a little bit, ask and you shall receive. Well, this is an ask, but it's a generalized ask for something that you perhaps need and want, for example, transportation. So I ask for the best possible outcome as it relates to my transportation, not to the BMW, because maybe I need a truck, and then to turn it over to my higher consciousness or to spirit to unfold the best possible outcome for the request that I'm making. And it gets it out of the realm of ego. It gets it out of the realm of trying to, with the mind, create something, but instead allows the universe to help you unfold that which you need and want.
Oh, that is very interesting. I love how you Um, I love how you describe that kind of engaging with the kind of using that breath and kind of using your senses to engage, see what you get and what you don't. The other question I have is
Just one other thing. The beauty of that process is you can use it for anything at any time during the day, whether it's the best possible outcome of the dinner that you're about to cook, all the way up to the best possible outcome of the job interview that you're about to go into. I mean, it can be used at any time of day. And I use it usually a couple of times a day for something.
interesting. The other question it is that I'm curious about is what do you mean by soul contact? How do you make
Yes.
does one make soul contact?
Well, I think the first thing to recognize is the fact that you have a soul or that you have a higher consciousness. So if you can recognize that, or at least willing to entertain that idea, then soul contact is possible. Because then it just becomes a matter of using perhaps some tools or some methods to have that experience. One of those is just what I did, journaling and kind of automatic writing or allowing the flow of spirit through your fingers onto the computer screen, perhaps asking some questions of your higher consciousness or considering something that you're interested in knowing something about or asking for some help and then just letting that flow. Meditation, again, is a great way to make soul contact because it allows you to get quiet enough to allow spirit to come into your experience. So my higher consciousness meditation process, which I developed with my high C, is a way of getting around all that business of trying to quieten the mind or trying to tame that wild horse that is your mental activity, but instead to go straight to an experience of higher consciousness or experience of spirit, and mind will naturally quieten itself down if what you do with your meditation practice is to use a meditation practice that takes you into a sense of spirit, a sense of five-dimensional reality, a sense of the allness of the universe. Those are the kinds of things which are conducive then to having that soul contact. And there are a number of other techniques that you can use.
Yeah, interesting. Next question I have is what is the difference between because you talk about sit down meditation method and how is that different than mindfulness? What is
Yes.
I'm just curious about
Okay. So sit down meditation is what people think of, when they sit on a chair or sit cross-legged and get quiet for a while, and use some sort of meditation practice that gets you into a state of peacefulness or a state of elevated awareness. And that can last anywhere from, I don't know, 5 minutes to 15 or 20 minutes, or however long you have to do a sit down meditation practice. Now, I do sit down meditation using my higher consciousness meditation process, morning and evening. So when I get up in the morning and just before I go to bed at night. But I also then use mindfulness practices, which is another form of meditation, which is these short phrases or mantras like peace be still, or like another one that I use is I live, move, and have my being in higher consciousness. Those are just really short triggers that can get you into a state of elevated awareness in just an instant as a tune-up throughout the day for whatever you've done in the morning and the evening in terms of meditating. So these mindfulness meditation practices, and I've got a book on just that subject, and it's got dozens of these triggers that you can use to just wake yourself up and to remember. So then it becomes remembering to remember. I have, for example, this little 3x5 card that I keep on my desk, and it says, breathe Christ consciousness. And it's just a reminder it to just click into that place for just a moment to elevate awareness. And that really helps me, I think, improve my life is kind of staying tuned up in that way.
Interesting. Yeah, I heard about these kind of like 1, 2 minute, tune-ups, especially because like kind of in the mid-afternoon when you're a little bit tired. And
Yes.
the other question I have is what do you mean by Christ consciousness in your system?
Yes. I grew up in a Christian church in my youth. And so Jesus was the master teacher in my religion. And I remember when I was very young, hearing about Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, Jesus. I thought Jesus's last name was Christ when I was really young because I didn't know what Christ meant. And I didn't even know what Christ meant as I grew up because nobody really knew what Christ meant. Christ is a term or a label for anybody who has achieved a state of elevated awareness that could be called Christ consciousness or Buddha mind. So there are many people who have achieved a state of Christ consciousness. There are many people who have achieved a state of Buddha awareness or Buddha mind. I think there's something like 58 Buddhas. There's not just the one Gautama Buddha. There have been 58 Buddhas, more or less, throughout history who have been said to have elevated their consciousness to a state of enlightenment where they could be called a Buddha. It's a term of endearment. It's like calling somebody a doctor or a Mr. or a Mrs. It's just a term that indicates where you've gotten to in your state of awareness.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. How can people find you, reach out to you? Again, these are like practices, spiritual, personal growth, and using meditation, journaling,
Yes.
to achieve a higher state of consciousness. How can people find you?
Well, first of all, I've written books that are on Amazon Books, so you can go and get any of my books. The meditation book, the mindfulness book, the manifestation book. I've got some journals. I've got a book of poetry, whatever. Also, if people would like to go to my website, which is highcmeditation.com, they can get a free copy of my mindfulness book. I'll send them an e-copy to your listeners. It's HI capital C meditation.com. And I'll send you the link for the show notes. That's another way that they can get in touch with me. And then if they'd be interested in a weekly blog post, I send out a newsletter every week, and it has an article on the subject of mindfulness or manifestation or meditation.
Yeah, interesting. And for all the audience, let's thank Blair for coming on and, giving this enlightening discussion about spirituality. I'm very interested in that and just becoming a better person. And thanks so much. And be sure to give Blair's socials a like and follow and reach out to him. So thanks so much.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed this and I was looking forward to it. So thank you for the invitation.